Mistress Munchkin and the Plutonium Dragon, the part 4 and final part of our story. Mistress Elfrida Munchkin has been living in a small cottage on the top of a cliff, sent there by her druid order to magically babysit a nuclear reactor known to her as Lumpy Bum. Despite her supposedly living alone, Elfrida's cottage is rather full, what with the twin spirits of place, Maelgwyn and Gaelgwyn, and her somewhat awakened helpful household implements, Fusser, Stuart, Bowley, and Cassie the Cauldron. Using her prodigious druidic power, Mistress Munchkin has managed to avert a nuclear meltdown by channeling off all the toxic energy as Lumpy Bum began to blow. Somehow, that energy has coalesced into a being, a scintillating, flowing, floating being of purple and silver that nobody has ever seen the like of before. A being she has named Dragon. A being made from dangerous radiation. And so our story continues. Dragon had heard her, despite her mumbling. It stretched its head back down to her again, while its body yet flitted about like some giant glistening hummingbird. "Poison?" it asked. "I am made of poison?" "Yes," Elfrida said. "Your body is made of something that does not sustain life. Not life as this planet knows it anyway." "That is not good," said Dragon, bringing its body down to earth once more, light and colours dimming. "I don't want to poison you, Mother." Large eyes peered into her face in worried inquiry. "Am I making you ill?" "I am safe, my child," she said. "I am protected. It is others who might be made unwell by you." "That is bad," Dragon said. "How will I be able to see this world if I will make the beings there unwell?" "Let's go have a cup of tea," Elfrida said decidedly. "I'm cold and I need tea. Tea helps me think." She made her way across the frosty grass with Dragon floating along behind her like the most spectacular parade balloon ever. At the door to the cottage she turned to size up her child and said, "Even if you pull in all your beautiful fins, you will still be too big to fit in my cottage, too big to sit on my cushions by my fire. I will put the kettle on and then bring tea outside. Let's see if you like tea." "Leave the door open, Mother," Dragon beseeched her. "I will be lonely out here." A being the size of a large house who has separation anxiety, that's going to be convenient, Elfrida thought to herself as she went to the fireplace to fill Fussy full and pop it into the centre of the fire, which she stirred up to get flames jumping. Then she hunted for her biggest teapot, known as Cassie the Cauldron, and put 10 teaspoons of tea into her. If Dragon drank tea at all, it would need a lot. Dragon had posed its vasty frilled head as far into the cottage as it could, and the room was filled with a purple and silver light that competed strangely with the flickering orange firelight. It watched her now with intense interest. "I like your house," it said. "I like the cushions and the fire. I would like to sit in there and drink tea with you, Mother." "Well, I would like that too," Elfrida said, "but as you can see, this is a small space and you are very big." Dragon grumped a bit in an amusingly similar way to Elfrida's own and subsided its head down until its short, frilly chin was resting on the back of the couch nearest the door. It sighed a long sigh that caught the tablecloth, which flapped up and nearly blew right off until caught by the weight of Cassie the Cauldron. Elfrida hefted Fussy up and poured a river of boiling water into the giant teapot. "Well, you're a sight for sore eyes," exclaimed Maelgwyn from her armchair where she had suddenly materialised, with Gaelgwyn in his chair beside her. The pair of old spirits were smiling wickedly, and Elfrida knew they were enjoying this unusual development very much. "I know you missed having a pet, but really, wouldn't a rat or white rabbit have done?" said Gaelgwyn with mock grumpiness. His old eyes were twinkling as he reached forward to stir up the fire with a fire poker as misty and half there as he himself was. The fire responded anyway. "What is a pet?" asked Dragon. "A pet is an animal that humans keep beside them for company," Elfrida said. "You are not a pet. You are a person. I'm just not sure what sort of person yet. These two are a different sort of person too, the annoying sort who poke their noses into things," she added, glaring at the two house spirits, who both chuckled unashamedly. Suddenly the cottage seemed way too small for all the large personalities in it. "I am a person, and persons sit in cottages and drink tea," said Dragon decidedly, and it began to come into the doorway more and more until its shoulders were stuck. Long, glowing frills of silver and mauve drifted about the room, and Elfrida carefully pulled one away from the hot teapot and set it drifting in another direction. Dust filtered down from the ceiling, and the walls creaked as the huge being continued to push. "Dragon!" Elfrida snapped. "You'll knock the cottage right over. You're too big to come in." The creature stopped, still pressing up against the door, gazing covetously at the couch and fire and the two chuckling old spirits in the corner. "I will be smaller," it said, and with that it began to shrink and shrink, until suddenly its shoulders fit through the door, and still it shrank until it was the size of a Great Dane, and now the whole body was inside, though there wasn't much room anymore, and then it was small as a cat. Dragon floated up onto the couch back where it had so recently rested its enormous chin. Ribbons of silver and purple spread out around it. It curled up, cat-like, and looked very, very unlike a cat, apart from the smugness. "There," it said, "I am now a person who can fit in a cottage and have tea by the fire." "Well, that's handy," Elfrida said, "but now we have too much tea." "Maybe," said Dragon, "but maybe I still have a very big stomach inside my smaller body. We will see." Elfrida grumped comfortably and poured tea into bowly for Dragon and into an ordinary cup for her. She filled cups for Maelgwyn and Gaelgwyn too, and placed them carefully beside the spirits. They couldn't drink the extant tea, but they enjoyed the ritual, and they said they drank the spirit of the tea. Elfrida didn't know how that worked, but it felt cosy to include them in the many times daily practice. She took down the biscuit tin and brought out 2 biscuits for each of them, a pair for each of the old house spirits too. She carefully placed them on each saucer beside the teacups. Dragon growled excitedly at the sight, big pug eyes popping out, streamers flowing around extra fast with emotion. "Ah, what an odd and long night," Elfrida thought to herself as she eased her substantial self down into her battered favourite armchair. Pulling her tea towards her to cradle it against her breast, still cold hands cupped around it, Elfrida settled at last with a sigh of contentment. Dragon reached a long stretchable neck to lap at its tea without leaving the couch back, a sight which made Elfrida snort with amusement, as Maelgwyn and Gaelgwyn leaned forward with happy but totally unnecessary old people groans to pick up the spirit cups of their own drinks, biscuits and all. Elfrida sipped hot tea like it was some magical healing elixir, and of course that is exactly what it is. Dragon drank up its tea in one snuffling, sucking, smacking rush, flat face jammed into bowly, then snapped up its biscuits and, still crunching, turned that odd, puggy, fishy face around to look at Elfrida. "Tea is very good, Mother, and I like person food." It settled back onto the couch back with its odd, finny hand feet tucked neatly under its chest. It blinked a few times and its head drooped for a moment. "I think I'm very tired now. Being born was hard work." "I hear you," Elfrida said, nibbling at her second biscuit. "Birthing you was hard work too." Dragon stared at her with those slightly protuberant, glowing purple eyes, looking more hungry than tired, and for a moment, as she nibbled there, Elfrida idly wondered if it might like to eat her for dessert, even though her heart knew that it wouldn't. Instead, the being crept forward until it was at the closest corner of the couch back. Then, "Could I?" it pleaded, and without waiting for an answer, it floated from the couch to her armchair, living fins of silver and purple drifting about as it came. It was suddenly on her lap, snuggled under where she still cradled her teacup. Warm, soft, and only slightly radioactive at this size, her new and very strange child began to snore gently, its silvery streamers slowing, sinking, drifting down to rest on her knees and to trail down her legs to the floor. Elfrida grumped a little, just to keep in practice, then sipped tea carefully so as not to disturb her sleeping dragon. She smiled, a secret, contented smile. The end. Thank you for listening to my story.